So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our April 2024 installment of Dear Neighbor series, where we're going to be discussing new membership on the Leadership Council. My name is Lisa. I serve as the Justice Coordinator here at the Federation and glad to be with you digitally today, whether you're joining live on Zoom or watching this perhaps later on our YouTube page. So as we begin, we encourage folks to remain muted. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute towards the end. And as we begin with all things, we begin with prayer. So I invite you to join me in our consensus prayer, consensus statement. Stimulated by the Holy Spirit of love and receptive to the Spirit's inspirations, we move always towards profound love of God and love of neighbor without distinction, from whom we do not separate ourselves, and for whom in the following of Christ we work in order to achieve unity of neighbor with neighbor and neighbor with God. In humility, the spirit of the incarnate word. In sincere charity, the manner of St. Joseph whose name we bear. In an Ignatian Salesian climate, that is, with an orientation towards excellence, tempered by gentleness, peace, joy. The maxim today is maxim 85, and these are translations from Marcia Allen and from a group of high school students that Sister Susan Wilcox worked with. The maxim 85. Advance good works until they are almost finished, and then whenever possible, let them be completed by someone else who will receive the honor. Lead a project through and then step out and let someone else finish and get the credit. It's too cool for words. I really appreciated that translation. It's too cool for words. So may we live out this maxim in our daily lives. And I'm really excited to turn over in a moment our featured speakers today. So let me make sure they're spotlit here. Looking for Kari. Where is Kari? There you are. Okay. I found you. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to pass it over to Sister Joan Gallagher from the community in Brentwood and Sister Kari Pohl from Baden to tell us a little bit more about our structures and relationships on the Leadership Council and some exciting new membership opportunities.
Thank you, Lisa. And really, thank you to the Federation staff, Mary Ellen, Kristen, Lisa, and Stella, a group of 4 strong people who really do a lot across the United States and beyond. So thanks for everything that you do with and for us. And so good day to everybody. I'm very happy to have been asked and invited to share with you and work with Kari in doing so as a former member of the Leadership Council. But in conversation, Kari and I thought that it would be first good to set some context about the Leadership Council, because we're not sure how familiar people are with that. So first, to just go back to the next slide, really in 1966, almost 6 decades ago, the purpose of setting up the Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And the line that really strikes me in this is to form a stronger bond of union among its members, to be a stronger influence in the church, and I would like to add, and in the world. And along these decades, as with the history of the Sisters of St. Joseph, we have been companioned and joined by so many wonderful, diverse members. And so in looking at that, we knew that the Federation had to shift because the focus needed to first be on the relationships in order for structures to come. And so as we were looking at the relationships, beep slide. Thanks, Lisa. We first looked at the charism collaborators, those who were working closely with the life, the vowed life, and then those who were sharing the works of justice and then the good word, sharing this good news out, because this is what's so important for our world to hear. And so these charism collaborators were key in their work with the Leadership Council and the Assembly in advancing the work of the Federation to form a greater bond. And now among them as well, the next we can look at charism collaborators, or charism carriers, as the term is now being shared. And this is to move beyond the canonically vowed membership. Many congregations have associates, some have agrégés, some have the term, they use the family of Joseph. And then we all have partners in mission, the good women and men who work with us because they too possess this charism of unioning love. And so these are the relationships that we want to look at. And so over the past almost 6 decades, the Federation structure has gone through various iterations based on the relationships. And at first, it really just started with those elected leaders who were serving their congregation. And then through that, there was offerings for the sisters of those congregations. And up until probably about 2016, 2017, the membership of the Federation were canonically vowed members. But the Leadership Council then was saying, well, we have all of these significant, valued, and important relationships. They journey with us. They share in this charism. So we need to relook at the structure and the membership, if you will. And so the following slide will kind of give you an example of what the Federation structure looks like now. And it's really, it's 2 entities, if you will. It's a public juridic person, which really has to do with the church and the canonical status. And that is really the Leadership Assembly, which is made up of all of the elected leaders in the congregations across the United States Federation. And their real reserve powers have to do with everything canonical around the vowed life, the canonically vowed life. For instance, the Federation novitiate, that the novices across the Federation share that experience. The other part is the civil corporation, if you will, the board of directors. And that's where the Leadership Council comes in. And the Leadership Council, again, prior to this organizational shift a few years back, was made up of all elected leaders. In order to serve on it, you had to be an elected leader in your congregation. But then as we began to shift the structure and to get more of the voices to the table and to be heard, that changed. And so now the Leadership Council is currently made up of 4 elected leaders, and they could be anyone that is called forth from the Leadership Assembly body. It is also comprised of 2 vowed members, 2 canonically vowed members from the younger 7% of the Federation. 3 of the charism collaborators, which would be your vocation formation personnel. It would be your JPIC people, which Kari is, and also communicators, because again, it's important to get the word out, and that's being worked on. And then we also then said, well, now if you're inviting new members, their voices need to be around the table as well. And so we're at the point of expanded membership. And the decision a few years back, as folks were starting to be a member, officially pay their membership dues, right? Once it hit 100 people, then they would receive a seat on the Leadership Council and then advance. So if we kind of look at the next slide, please. So you'll see there's a total of 4 from the Leadership Assembly. There's your elected leaders. There's 2 from the younger 7%. There's 3 from the charism collaborators and now the expanded membership, getting ready to have someone sit there because we have reached that 100 membership mark. And then as it reaches 250, another one will be seated. And then when it hits 500, then they'll have their complete 3 seats on the leadership council. So it'll be a total of 10, right? I got that 6. Yep. No, 4, 12. Okay, do the math, Joan. Okay, so it's important though to clarify what expanded membership means. All right, and all congregations pay for their sister members. They pay their dues annually. An expanded membership would mean that we are looking for non-canonically vowed members, non-employed by congregations, but their dues, which I still believe is $50 a year, are paid by themselves or perhaps through their institution, because there's institutional membership as well. And then as dues paid members, they would then have the opportunity to put forth their name, if they feel so called, to serve on the leadership council. So that's kind of like a brief overview of the leadership council and the makeup that is moving towards having more people in the expanded membership area. So I'd just like to hand it over to Kari, who will speak a little bit about her experience serving on the council.
Thank you, Joan. So it's been interesting. I have been on the leadership council as a non-elected leader. So I'm a justice and peace coordinator. I am not in elected leadership in my congregation, though I am a vowed sister. I have been on the leadership council since 2019. And I'm not going to lie, it's been a little bit messy. We've been living into the structure. I'm happy to say, though, that it does seem to be, how do I say, settling down. And so we're realizing, like, we went into the new structure and there were some things that just like weren't working about it. And so we've done some tweaking, and it's a much more stable structure now. When I first got onto the leadership council, we were having 4 in-person meetings a year. And so it was fun if you were a sister and you were in a ministry that you could take that kind of time off. It would have been very challenging for a non-vowed member with a family and a full-time job that they couldn't take the time off. And so in 2020, all of our meetings went from in-person to Zoom. And that was a very good thing for us. We realized that we didn't have to be in person all of the time. The meetings went from being a full weekend to being maybe 3 or 4 hours in an afternoon or an evening. And it became more sustainable and more viable, especially for a person who might have a family at home and a full-time ministry that they can't necessarily take weekends and weekdays off. And so after 2 years of meeting solely on Zoom, we realized that, to do strategic planning, to do deep thinking, you really do need to be in person every once in a while. And so our current structure is we still do 3 to 4 of our meetings on Zoom, and those are about 3 or 4 hours long. And then we have 1 in-person meeting a year, usually in November. And that's usually a day or a day and a half long meeting. And so that's currently what the work of the leadership council, what would be asked of you if you were to decide to put your name in to be on the leadership council. As I mentioned, it was pretty murky at the beginning. We were struggling with what are our responsibilities as the civil corporation versus what are the responsibilities of the leadership assembly, the canonical leadership. And so that is slowly been getting cleared up. And so we're in a position now where I think the leadership council can really do some visioning and make some movement toward toward the future of the Federation. I'm gonna stop there because I can go on for more, but I'm gonna pass it back to Joan and then I'll come back.
Thanks, Kari. And just to give the perspective, I was invited onto the Leadership Council in 2016 because at that point I had begun serving a term of congregational service on our congregation's Leadership Council and remained there until 2022 because it was 3 years. And I don't know, I think they roped me in an extra year. Anyway, it was delightful. And when I said yes, just my experiences of the Federation and all of whom I was meeting really was the impetus for me to say yes, because the Federation has always kept the bigger picture for me. And so saying yes and not fully understanding what I was getting myself into and trying to learn, what this all meant and what the structure was, they up and decide to change the structures. I'm like, what? So it was a whole process that, those of us who were in elected leadership at that time really became a part of. And we worked with this group called the Reed Group, and it was a wonderful and inclusive process that really then expanded the representation, obviously, on the Leadership Council and the relationships. And yes, it was and is messy, but the points of being around the table when you would have some clarity, like we have clarity, that's good. So it cleared the space then to take the next step and continue to move towards that clarity. But I think more importantly than the structure that we were calling forth to bring together was focusing on the relationships. And as we focused on the relationships, because it was all new, but anytime you give birth, and any of you who have given birth knows it is messy, but what can come from it is so beautiful, and the newness of life. And so in focusing on the relationships, it really then directed us, okay, how do we create a structure that's going to hold these relationships where they can breathe and expand and thrive and all of that. And so that's pretty much what we did. And actually, going back and forth with Kari on the slides, since I stepped off the Leadership Council, I guess in two years ago, there's been changes. So she was coaching me on and giving me more clarity, which is great. But really, my role then as an elected leader and serving on the Leadership Council and being a part of the Leadership Assembly was a wonderful bridge, because leadership, those in the Leadership Assembly are dealing with everything at home, the life of their sisters and the congregation. And so to be able to bring them back, and give them, their need to know points and keep them in the loop, and then bringing back the information from the assembly to the council just keeps the whole fluidity. And then bringing in the younger sisters and then the collaborators, again, the relationships continue to deepen and widen. And that's what brings the clarity. Because if this is the same group and you're focused on here and everything else, you don't always see. So when you bring it in, and of course, I have to say the expanding Federation staff and having their insights has been key as well.
Thanks so much, Joan and Kari. I'm going to add a spotlight for Kristen to walk us through a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of membership. I know that we've heard this before in these series, but I just feel like it bears reiterating. And then also what this could mean if someone on this call or someone who watches this later is interested in being a part of that expanded membership seat at the table, so to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, an important part of this is that in order to fill this spot, you need to be a member. And everybody is a member of the Federation family, but we mean this in a little bit more of a formal aspect. And so what does that mean? So I am actually going to share my screen really quick because I think it's probably easiest just to go about it this way. So if you go to our website, you can go to Get Involved, Become a Member. And so you can learn more about the membership program. I won't go through all of it because it will take a little bit too much longer than we have here. But essentially, anyone who associates with the Sisters of St. Joseph can join our membership program. Sisters do not need to join. You're covered by your congregational dues, but everyone else is open. I know previously we've had staff sort of grandfathered in. At this point, we've ended that. So if you are a staff member and want to join the membership program, you can. And individuals pay $50 a year. Families, so if you have, typically we've had partners or husbands and wives who have joined that, as in, both part of the associate program, you can pay $75 a year. And then institutional rates are the rates for organizations. So we think of, some of our sponsored ministries that want to be a part of the Federation's future. That's kind of what we're thinking about when we say institutional rates. Right now, we have it set up by seats. In the future, we are considering switching it by how many, like how big is your organization, like a lot of other organizations do it. As Joan and Kari both said, we are learning through these processes, and this is all new, and we're learning from how this all works. And so you can click there to join. I can drop some of that information. But all that to say is that if you are not a sister and you're on this call, you can become a member of the Federation, a paid member of the Federation, we like to say, to kind of differentiate between our general oneness. And so the reason why this is important is because this spot for this leadership council role, you do need to be a paid member. And if you are a paid member and know you're a paid member, you can automatically go fill out this interest form. If you have previously been a paid member and are unsure about your status, you can email us at info@cssjfed.org. That's our general email, and we can check it for you to make sure that you're up to date. And if you are not a member and want to consider joining this leadership council role, you can join over here. And you are eligible. You don't have to have a year under your belt of time. You can join at any point. So the interest form is fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Again, a paid member of the U.S. Federation. I say cannot be a sister. It sounds so harsh, but it's just that sisters have the other roles, as Joan and Kari have explained. You just need to have a desire to serve as a representative of this wider membership, because you are kind of going to, as that seat member, you're kind of speaking, representing, liaisoning for that role. And then we do meet 4 times a year, but we're very flexible with scheduling. We just wanted to stress that because, before we had sisters who were in leadership, so that was part of their job. We know now by expanding it to our lay membership that might not fit people's work schedules. So we will be accommodating on that. We'll send out this form. I will also drop it in the chat, but you can see it's pretty straightforward. Your contact information, what is your association to the charism? So, our Agrégés, associates, St. Joseph Worker Community, our partners in mission, people who are employed by the sisters. We have people who were previously in formation with the sisters, alums of our schools, school employees, like all of those different roles have sort of been a part of our CSSJ charism, and I'm sure I'm missing some other nuances that are in there. And then we have some open-ended questions about, do you have experience in any of these areas, and why are you interested in joining? So I see some questions, I think, happening in the chat.
Yes, I just forwarded a couple of questions that I'm happy to read out if you're able to answer them, Kristen or others on the Leadership Council. And just as a reminder, our Leadership Council functions like our board of directors, like in a regular NGO. So I always just like to name that because sometimes it gets a little confusing. So as a member, do we have to log into the website to gain access to resources?
The background of the website is still a work in progress. We've been working on some of the other membership benefits. Like this has been a membership benefit of joining the council for since the beginning of the program, and I think I've been taking membership since 2020, 2019, so it's been a while. So it's all a little bit of a learning process, but I promise everyone who has been and is a member will immediately be the first people to know when those resources are available. Now, any resources you think might be available on the background of the website, you can just email me and I can get them to you.
Another question is, this is probably for Kari or Joan. We have another minute or two to talk about this. Kind of the challenges and opportunities of the Leadership Council in terms of shifting demographics of congregations, whether it's in terms of collaborations, mergers, completions. So if there's anything that you'd like to comment on about that.
I'll take that. Yes, that is one of the realities. Yeah, so one of the reasons why the new structure came into being is to make it more sustainable. And I think this applies to congregationally sponsored ministries too, like at the local level, is that if a congregationally sponsored ministry is going to outlive the congregation that sponsors it, it needs to become independent of the vowed members of the congregation that sponsors it. And so one of the ways that the Federation is hoping to move into the future is to, the member congregations of the Federation would like to hand over the charism or have been handing over the charism. I mean, that has been going on. And so how do we maintain a structure, keep a structure, hold a structure that holds onto the relationships across the charism as we're moving into a future where there are less vowed members to do that work? And so that is it is a challenge. And it is a goal that we're working toward. I did want to say too that for anybody who's thinking about becoming a member of the Leadership Council as part of the expanded membership, if it's any consolation, you will not be the first non-vowed member of the Leadership Council. There was a development director who was on the Leadership Council from 2019 to 2022. And so you won't be the first. Sometimes it can be scary to be the first. And so there has been precedent already. You will not be setting the precedent.
That's great.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great, Kari. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
I have two just logistical questions that Kristen's going to answer briefly that I'm going to read out so folks can hear it, about clarification around if the expanded membership representative can or cannot be an employee of one of the congregations, and then the question of travel expenses for the annual meeting. So if you just want to do that, and then we'll close out. Thanks, Kristen.
Great. Kari actually answered the travel expenses in the chat. Thank you, Kari. But the Federation covers the travel expenses. So that's something that would be reimbursed by the Federation. Also why we've kind of shifted to the once a year in person, making it a little bit easier for everyone. And then in terms of the employees, I'm pretty sure, so we've had a little bit of a shift before where the employees were covered in this kind of like murky area. I do believe that employees can be members of this expansion. Joan, you're giving me eyes. So I'm like, we might need to just double clarify this point. But if you're interested because of your role of an associate, I think it makes sense that you would still be able to join.
And the question, I guess, for clarification was, if the employee is an associate, would that be like permitted?
I am almost positive that will be included. I will double clarify before I send out this email. Like I said, we are still finding these like weird nuances that we haven't had these questions asked before and just need to solidify. So thank you for these questions. This helps us.
So I hope any other questions? We are at the half hour, so I want to honor people's time. But I do really appreciate all that we're able to join. We had over 40 people on this call. And again, if folks have questions or you want to point people to this resource, we'll share out that this is on our YouTube page. And the final thing I'll name is that we have our upcoming series continues. So next month on May 15th, we'll hear from Agreges. And then in June, we'll hear from the Vocation and Formation Committee. And in July and August, we will not have this series. So just to kind of flag that for folks, it's the same registration link that goes out every month. We try to send reminder emails so that you have that Zoom link on the top of your inbox. And again, thanks so much for joining. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.